use computer. All right. Hello, this is the kubeadm office hours. Today is the 13th of May 2020. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Please add your names and your topics. All right, let me share my screen. We don't have new meeting participants. PSA, I have a bunch of items. If you have any topics, please add them. Hopefully we can have the time for everything. Okay, so control planes images switch to distroless minus etcd and controller manager. etcd, I don't know what is broken. etcd controller manager is blocked by flex volume support. Six Storage knows more about this. I think if you jump into this link, you can follow the rabbit hole of PRs and issues that explain the problem. I think it's very important for us that we manage to switch to not using bin/sleep during upgrade. We did it just in time, which is, I'm happy about this. Any comments about distroless?
I have only concerns, since that the machinery that as far as I know, the machinery that generate images is not versioned, and I'm wondering if when they do the switch, they will rebuild also old versions with distroless.
Isn't the machinery versioned because it resides in Kubernetes?
Ah, okay, so it is changed now.
I mean, it's probably split between Kubernetes release as well. I don't know all the details. But Kubernetes release is also versioned. They now have tags.
Okay, so that means that we are sure that whenever they cut a new release for 1.18 or for 1.17, the images will be generated without distroless.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, this is very breaking.
Yeah, that was only my concern.
Yeah, I think on the kubeadm side we're pretty good. I don't think we have anything else that is important for the distroless aspect at this point. So yeah, we shall see.
Yeah, we are unblocked. No, probably we still depends on the TCD for our end-to-end. On a TCD CTL for our end-to-end tests.
Oh yeah, I remember. We have to pull standalone etcd kernel, which there is no standalone etcd kernel. You have to pull the whole etcd package and extract the etcd kernel and match it with the server version, ideally.
I think that, so if I remember well, in our end-to-end test, the TCD-CTL is only used to basically print the status of a TCD when we run cluster info, and this can be replaced with a call to the TCD API. So.
Aha, but this means that we have to import an etcd client in the kubeadm repo.
Yeah, let me tell in this way. So when we are running end-to-end tests, it is nice to have something that prints the status of the TCD, but it is not something fundamental. It's just a reporting. So if we find a way to replace it, fine. Otherwise, we can even drop this output.
Okay, I think we had an issue about this. Let me quickly check, because this is rather important for when etcd moves. Kinder etcd this through less, maybe. Issues. Stop calling etcd kernel from within the etcd containers. Okay. It's for next. Yeah, I'm going to triage this later. Okay. We have an issue. All right. Any more comments about this, Turles? Okay, let's move to this PR. Rafa, you were assigned to this for a review, but I canceled the hold because I didn't know if you are available or not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't have the time to look into it. Sorry. I saw the lazy consensus and that it merged. I'm going to look into that, but yeah, it's fine if it merged.
Yeah, we basically wrapped both the HCD client dial and the membarat in a exponential backoff. So they both retry now. But we are only doing this for add member. And with the idea that we have to backport the change to a version. Now a question, I guess, here for Fabrizio. Can we avoid backporting to 116? Do we care only about 117 and 118?
Let me check this. I think that we can port to only to 117. Yeah, I see Nadir that yeah. I think that 117 is good, and then let's see if someone asks for it for porting more releases. But 117 is fine for me.
But 118 is already released, so we have to backport it to it as well.
Yeah, yeah. So 118 for sure. Okay, and then 117 for me should be included as well. The change is not big, and it is doable for me.
Okay, I'm going to set the backports today. I'm going to request approval. Hopefully, we don't raise any eyebrows with this, slightly non-critical change to the external viewers, I guess.
I don't see this as they are fixing the problem that users are facing, and so they are bug fixes, even if they are bug fixes for use case that happens only under particular circumstances that are slow etcd basically. But at the end they are bug fixing, so I don't see a big problem in backporting.
Okay, if I require more explanation, I'm going to ask folks to join the discussion, if the release team for some reason decides to question.
Yeah, I'm fine. We have the issue, everything is documented, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to close the issue after the bug sports are merged. This is good to go, I think. So this is a cap that I'm not sure people saw. So the core APIs of Kubernetes have been stuck in beta, some of them for a very long time. And people just abandon them because, they implement something in product, in upstream Kubernetes, and they decide, okay, we have our products now, let's abandon upstream work completely. And a lot of APIs are stuck in alpha or beta upstream. So David Eads decided to make a slight change here. So basically, once you create an API, core API, now they add some tags to the core API as annotations. And I have an example PR to show you what's going on. So basically, once the API starts staying in beta for a very long time, the API server is simply going to stop serving the core API completely. So this is an example. I guess something is introduced in 1.11. it's going to be deprecated automatically 114, and it's going to be removed in 122. Unless you introduce a new version of V1 Beta 2. So basically, this is like a, like a stick from the core maintainers to kick out APIs that are stale. And I bring this to the kubeadm discussion, that I think with our APIs, we have to, I don't know what is the term, maybe we should be slightly braver introducing incremental APIs such as V1 Beta 3, even if it's not doing that many changes, increments. So this is basically why I brought this into this discussion.
I got your point, and to be honest, I agree in what they are doing, because it is not fair that someone implements something and then abandon the feature in some intermediate state. We are doing something. We proposed something similar in CAPI for the experimental feature, for the CAPI experimental features. And going back to kubeadm API, I got your point. To be honest, I'm kind of holding on this topic personally, because we are depending from the kubeadm API at the end is really dependent on the component config effort, on the idea of having component config per instance, on the idea of supporting upgrade of component config. And I don't want to push our API and then being forced to rework as soon as this thread gets to have some, let me say, progress. So this is why I'm holding on kubeadm. Personally, I'm trying to postpone any change to the kubeadm API. It is because I don't want to change and then being forced to change again because component config goes in one direction. But I got your point that we cannot hold forever. So I think that this is we have to raise this point in the SIG meeting, and we have to take a decision at SIG level, because now changing the kubeadm API is not a matter of kubeadm, but it's a matter of kubeadm and the ecosystem of tools that builds on top of kubeadm. So if we have to be braver, I would like the support of the entire SIG.
I also agree with what Fabrizio said, and to add to that, there is also the advanced config cap, which Ljubomir actually proposed these days, and I see that the patch idea there can also benefit from integration with the component config of kubeadm. So probably we should wait for that to merge and to implement at least an alpha version using command line only, and then think of a good integration with the component config as well.
Yeah, it's really hard to find the balance and the appropriate time to introduce a new API version at this point. We are waiting on too many factors to converge into the picture. So we just have to find the right time. But also something to note here is that release cycles are becoming longer, I think. SIG release is pushing for a 4-month release cycle. I think the excuse was the pandemic, but there was also a cap that proposed that we should move to 4 months of, with the proper idea of LTS support. So basically with that, with this change, we have 1 month more per release. So if we don't release a new API this version, we have to wait 4 months for a new version to be released. And then in this period, we have to think whether component config is going to change in some way, or if other tools will have different demands, like cluster API, or maybe, I don't know, Kube Spray or something. So we have a longer time now to evaluate whether we should push a new version or not. And I think that we should take our time to make a decision and say, okay, we are definitely releasing a new API in 1.21 or something like that. Having something more concrete is better. Okay, any more comments on the cap in kubeadm API? Okay, so I wrote this cap. I think it was around 4 a.m. in the morning. So I'm not very proud of it. But it makes some ideas.
It was actually good. You are amazing for writing this cap at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Well, I have oftentimes some sort of a midnight epiphany of writing a cap, but to be honest, I think it needs some improvements here and there, and I'm happy that you guys commented on this already. Basically, it's based completely on Fabrizio's cap about customize, and after discussions with Tim and the wider SIG, we kind of decided to move away from customize and try with raw patches. But now the question is, like, how do we manage the raw patches? And so first of all, the naming. This is the first major comment. Maybe we should go with experimental patches. The question is, this is at some point going to become only dash patches. And ultimately it points to a directory. Should we have something like a directory in the name of the flag as well?
So if you actually go and see my other comment is basically that I don't like the idea of putting patches in a directory and then having like to parse their file names to just tell whether they're like JSON or merge patch or whatever.
Yeah, but so I have an idea here. We can introduce the feature with the directory and continue supporting it. But also, as part of the alpha to beta graduation, maybe, I don't know if I'll outline this here, we can also integrate the same functionality in the kubeadm API. Like you said, in the node registration options, maybe, we can have the same, I can design the backend here in such a way that it can work from a directory or also from the API.
Yeah, it's not about the API, but it's about the UX. So what I was proposing here is to basically have a separate command line switch for the different kinds of patches we support, and that you can also basically supply only a single file with a single command line switch. But for example, you can use several different, like several command line switches. I'm not sure whether it will come up here actually, but if you go in the discussion of this PR.
But the original customize feature, you did not propose that in there. The customize your own.
But we were basically restricted by customizing there, and we wanted to basically follow what the kubectl folks were doing. And what I'm proposing here is basically what quite close to what kubectl is doing at the moment. So if you scroll down on my review, I think that it's in the outline. Yeah, here in the outline of the review. At the top of my review.
Uh, here.
Just at the top.
Okay.
Yeah, here.
Okay. So if you add the separate flags, do you mean the benefit of a directory is that you can have as many patches as you want, ordered differently, and be of a different type. If you pass a flag that is specific to a type, this means the contents have to be a multi-doc of the patch with the same type. So how would you control the order of appliance of strategic versus JSON patches?
So the idea is to basically use the files that are supplied in the order that they came actually. So for example, you can basically just say -- experiment dash patch dash strategic and then a strategic patch, then say -- experiment patch experimental patch JSON, then say another like JSON patch, then add another for example yet another JSON patch file, and then revert back to a strategic. So in that case, it will just apply the first strategic patch, then the second two JSON patches, and then the second strategic patch as well.
But how is that better than having a folder with the suffixes, the file suffixes controlling the order?
Well, basically, it's much more explicit. So having a folder, you basically have to be very careful how you name your patches. And adding another file to that folder actually slip something in between them. And this might be accidental.
Yeah, but it's alphabetic. If you add the patch with the suffix of Z, it's obviously going to be last.
Yeah, and what do you actually do with files in that folder that don't actually follow the naming convention?
You just print a verbosity warning that the file is being ignored.
Yeah, I guess that that is just a matter of preference. For now, for the alpha version at least, we can go with a folder and then decide what to do with the UX after that. But yeah, at least to my taste, having specific flags which should specify the patches in the order you actually like on the command line is much more better approach than having just a file dump in a directory.
So I was thinking about creating something that is called a patch set at the at the backend side. And the patch set can handle both files that are multi-doc and also a list of files, a list of patch sets. And then, for example, with the kubeadm API, we can have a field somewhere eventually that is called patches. And the patches is going to be a list of patch sets that have a type and some blob of data that is a multi-doc potentially, or we can think of something else. But the order in the patch set is also going to be controllable there. So eventually, we can completely remove this flag as well and say, hey, you can use only like the Kubernetes doing, removing all its flags. You can say, you can use only the kubeadm API, either passing a folder or this list of files. So this is like a very, very like overview, long-term idea here.
Yeah, I think that you can basically fill in such a list using the separate options as well. So it's really a matter of user experience right now, and it's not that much of a backend. So the backend, I can imagine it will always stay the same there. Basically, these three types of patches and how they are used to be applied over static pods. It's only the front end, and since we are talking terms right now, we can basically go with whatever approach we can think of right now as the best one. And we can also, it's really an alpha state, we can basically allow for other options and just remove those when we actually go with graduating it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Fabrizio had a concern here that if we add this, we are adding a new very how do I say, competitive feature to the old one. Users might get confused, and also we are having a discontinuity of the customized feature. So I personally, again, going back to the topic of moving forward, I think with kubeadm, I think that we should potentially, make more decisions, even if we add a bunch of stuff, remove a bunch of stuff. We're kind of protected by the whole experimental alpha tag.
No, I'm okay in changing. My concern is to properly communicate that we are changing. So we have to send an email to the mailing list. We have to write in the channels. We have to prepare an action required for the PR. But I'm okay in changing experimental features. So it's just a matter to properly communicate. We are backed by the contract. This is experimental, and experimental can be changed. In this case, the adoption is fairly low, as far as I know. So, in my opinion, it's okay to communicate in this way, communicate in the SIG in the main SIG meeting, and that's all. With regard to the discussion of the flags, I stick to the common, let me say, the tradition of kubeadmin, that is to use flags only for the most common use case and to keep the flag surface as small as possible. And but for now, we and use the config for the for everything which is not in the most common use case. Given that we cannot change the config now, I would like to add a flag. I have no big preference with the name, but probably we should write in the proposal that the flag will be replaced by a config option soon. Mm-hmm. And it's just coming to my mind a question with regards to compatibility. So we are saying that we cannot change an API, but what the current API type? But what about adding types to V1 alpha, to V1 beta?
Yeah.
Is this considered a break and change, adding a type, a field? Sorry.
Yes. So I at some point in time I read the official guide about writing REST APIs, which is basically what the Kubernetes API and component config are based on. They are following the principles of REST API. The problem there is that they, like you say, it's fine to introduce a new field. It's not a breaking change. Removing a field and or renaming a field has to imply a new version. But adding fields is fine. However, I really don't like if we start doing that, because we have a pretty good understanding as developers what we added, when we added it, and also it tells the users that that follow, advanced users that follow closely the kubeadm API, they know when was this introduced. If you introduce a new field suddenly, like I'm going to forget when we added that, And also the users are maybe going to be confused when we added that as well. So this is one of the reasons I think our API, quote unquote, set in stone after release is maybe the better approach.
Yeah, also component standard actually went to the component configs of like the existing components and basically added strict serializers. And we actually had to go and make those just a warning strict serializers for now, because people are quite used to adding new fields to their configs, and basically you can basically end up with, for example, v1 beta 1 version that is not compatible with the older component version because it has a new field and the older component cannot actually parse that. And basically there is a sort of a contract there that a new component config version is going to be always strictly serialized, while the existing ones are only with warnings. So I suppose that in the long term, we should also try and do the same. And I see that the contract here with regards to component configs is slightly different than the REST APIs.
I got your point, but if I look at other projects in Kubernetes, also in Kubernetes itself, they are adding fields. And so my point is, I understand what are you saying. I understand the problem of strict registration and so on and so forth. But it seems that in the Kubernetes land, this is a common practice. So in light of Lubomir idea that we have to keep moving, I'm just wondering if we are being too strict here.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. Moving faster by adding fields or sacrificing this moving faster aspect because we want to have better control and better understanding for the users what is added and when it's added. Also think about docs. We have to update docs. Now suddenly a new field appears. We might get questions, more questions. When was this added? How is it supported? We have I think it's going to, what we have right now is easier for us to coordinate with the users.
Okay. However, maybe discussing with Tim or Justin, so we have an agreement at SIG level and saying and state somewhere that we consider fine to do so, and we suggest to document this change because in Cluster API they are going to do this, and probably other in Kubernetes they are doing this and other projects. So I think that we have to have a kind of policy at SIG level written somewhere, and then okay, it's something that we don't have to abuse, that we have to use with judgment, but it's not. I think that is nice to. It will be nice to have some well-defined policy around this topic.
Yeah, well, definitely some sort of a special snowflake. Everybody else is doing that. I agree. So we have to define the policy why we are doing it. We also have to evaluate when we are marshalling stuff. Like, is this going to cause problem for us? Like in the cluster status or?
Yeah, in Kubernetes we went for the strict marshalling way. Probably there will be some problem if we do this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so going back to this KEP, by the way, the deadline for KEPs is Tuesday next week for merging as implementable. I know, Rossi, you want to have the extension always present here?
Well, basically, not state that it's optional or something like that. We don't have to validate it.
But if it's not optional, does it has to be either JSON or YAML at this point?
Probably just some sort of extension there. JSON, YAML, or conf actually would work.
If there is a lack of extension, does it mean that we have to ignore the file?
Well, we don't know what it is actually.
Sorry?
We don't know what it is, so it may be following some strange scheme, or for example, some documentation in there. You can basically just add a .md or .txt file there to document what this is doing in the same file there.
Let's see. So I think I'm going to change this to require JSON or YAML pretty much as the file extensions, I guess. It's probably better like that. So the name, I'm going to update the name everywhere and also update this about the extension. I think there's not anything else. Do we have any more comments here? Do you think it's possible to merge this as implementable until next week?
I will make another pass, and I think that it's important to add that in a note that in the long term the flag will be removed. The experimental flag will be removed in favor of the config.
Aha, I think I already had this actually. Let me.
Yeah, I made a pass to 1 week ago. I don't remember all the details.
API. No, this is not it. Okay, I don't think I have a note about that. Okay, I'm going to add this. Kept topic. Rossi, do you have, sorry, Nadir, go ahead.
Yeah, it might be worth having a use case around how Cluster API could consume it without having to pass in the files, even if you don't do it in the first pass. Like,
I see. So the first pass of this, the experimental alpha stage, will require a folder. If we move to a new, if you move to the kubeadm API, Cluster API is going to be able to, but this means that Cluster API has to move to support the new version of the kubeadm API. Implementing the patches is going to be very tricky, I think.
I think that's fine as long as we talk about it and say that might be an eventual thing that we do, even if it is in your initial implementation as consumption via the folders and files.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring it up at the Cluster API meeting anyway. I'll put a link to it so if anyone's got some idea.
Yeah, kubekernel allows you to pass a single patch. This allows you to pass a folder because we have multiple patches. Multiple targets to patch. We have to have a folder, or like Rossi is proposing, we have to have separate files. Why cannot Cluster API accept a folder?
It can. I mean, we can. Right now, people can create the files, pass them in via Cloud Init as extra files, etc. But I don't know, from a Cluster API perspective, that would be the best UX. there's some discussion about how we're going to consume cloud init going forwards as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll just make sure people get some eyes on it from the cluster API community and see if there's comments.
Yeah, I pinged the whole SIG. I mean, I haven't said, I think I didn't send a message to the mailing list, but I think I said a PR. Yeah, I picked this. So this is probably, at least Jason saw this, and I think Vince, but you know, no responses. I really think we should proceed this with, for this cycle, even if in this alpha state, the way it is with the folder, maybe think about something else later.
Okay.
All right. I think we exhausted this. The cap is here. Okay, so we have 70 bits. So the OpenRC people have been bugging us. Sorry for using the expression, but they have been asking for us to fix OpenRC support. We don't really have that many users. First of all, OpenRC is used on Alpine. Currently, it's broken for the fact that kubeadm creates, kubeadm starts the kubelet and lets it crash loop, then writes the static pods to disk and the kubelet configuration to disk, and the crash looping system, this service is supposed to pick the files on disk and start the kubelet properly. The problem with that is that OpenRC apparently does not support automatic restarts of services. There's no way to tell OpenRC to even, I don't know how to programmatically restart the service within the spec of the service. You can only execute it on the command line, say, hey, restart this service for me. So we had a discussion with the contributor that is trying to fix this. Basically, sorry, I think this is the issue. Let me find the PR. All right. So here's proposing to add a new phase, which my initial reaction was not, we should not do that. The alternative is to moving the kubelet start phase, but according to him, it's already failing at that point, which I have to double check actually. And also you had a proposal. The service should be installed disabled. Do you think, is this applying to systemd as well?
Yeah, this should be the default. At least this is what some Linux distributions are actually doing with regards to installing packages that add services that don't work out of the box. So they don't have a default configuration, which is the case with the kubelet. So it doesn't have a default configuration. It needs kubeadm or some other tool to go and supply it with configuration to join a cluster. And the other thing here is that OpenRC should also support restarting kubelet if it crashes, simply because the kubelet was actually designed from the ground up to just restart if there is something wrong.
Exactly. So this is a problem with OpenRC. They not supporting restarts is very problematic. Something that I also propose here. So the first point, Rosti, I don't know how we cannot do that in the short term, I guess. For 119, I don't think we should be changing the spec for systemd.
Yeah, I don't think that we should be doing that. At least it needs a huge action required item somewhere, simply because it may surprise someone. So for example, in our case, we need to have phase here. So we can actually just enable and start the kubelet service. And we also need to basically enable it because we currently only started or restarted we also need to enable it.
Mm-hmm. But quite frankly, I think this is something that we get away with. Just put, if we detect OpenRC as the service, we can just put it in a crash loop inside kubeadm. This is like a quick fix for us, to be honest.
But then don't we actually need to run kubeadm as a sort of service at every boot? I think that what they can actually try and do is just to wrap the kubelet in a sort of simple shell script and just restart kubelet, sort of the way systemd is actually doing it right now.
But if the system reboots on Alpine, I'm assuming that it's going to restart all its services.
I guess so, but we don't need to reboot the entire system if the kubelet crashes.
Okay, but this is all about kubeadm commands, I guess. Huh.
Yeah, that's why I was actually suggesting to pretty much go and talk with sig release, sig arch, and basically point them to a potential problem here and get a solution that will actually work on both systemd, OpenRC, and the Windows Service Manager.
Quite frankly, I don't think that these SIGs care that much about this problem. So it's another topic that we are going to open, but we are not going to get any responses.
Yeah, but to be honest, I don't think that this is up to kubeadm and ensure that everything works on every platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it is part of the goal that the Kubernetes of Kubernetes itself that it should run everywhere.
Yeah, I honestly think that this is what we can do now. This is the easiest fix. We can just put a coroutine that restarts the service in case of OpenRC and kill the coroutine after 2 minutes if it fails to start the service.
Yeah, but we cannot actually do it in the kubelet start phase. We should do it probably in the wait for control plane phase.
Why?
Because in the wait for control plane phase, you're basically waiting for the API server to pop up, and if it's basically the API server is backed by a static pod, so you need to have a kubelet to be running.
Can we increase the timeout in that case? Like, I don't know, 5 minutes, crash looping the OpenRC kubelet for 5 minutes?
Well, we need basically add this somewhere, but not in the kubelet start phase. I think that the kubelet start phase is basically the last phase here. If you just expand this init runner.append phase section here in the original source, I think you'll see that the kubelet start phase is basically the last thing there. It's actually a few phases after the wait for kubelet. So basically we can add this go routine, but we need to add it in an earlier phase.
Well, the kubelet start phase is here, like it's exactly the second phase.
Oh yeah, probably I was confused by something else, but yeah. Yeah, we can add it then here and just increase the number of retries and the timeout to be able to basically wait for all the phases to be complete.
Like hopefully we can still track an issue that OpenRC have to fix their init system eventually, but I don't know what else we can do without disrupting the phase order and stuff like that for systemd.
Well, it may also be up to the Alpine folks who actually package the kubelet to just wrap the kubelet into some small script that basically just restarts the kubelet if it crashes after a certain delay. So it's a simple and a sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Do you want to comment on the issue about that with your idea with the wrapper? In the meantime, I guess we can proceed with this fixing with kubeadm and other, to do or something else about this very hacky implementation.
Yeah, I'll leave a comment there.
I don't know where the issue was. Let me find it. Yeah, it's called OpenRC. Yeah, OpenRC column kubeadm. We have 7 minutes. Okay, let's move to the next one. So, Rossi, do you want? So this has to merge as well as implementable, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, so basically I added a few user stories today. I also changed the long flag name, which was inconsistent there, to --config, but it has some strange side effect there. So in order to keep things backward compatible, basically the file that you're supplying with --config to kubeadm upgrade plan or upgrade apply is checked for a kubeadm configuration in there first. And if it contains, for example, a cluster configuration there, it's going to basically just use that file in its entirety. And if it has a component config missing from there, it will generate it. And then like this whole thing of generated and used from the file configs is going to be just applied and will override everything that's in the cluster. So this is the expected behavior currently. And the other thing is that if you omit any kubeadm configuration from there and supply just some component configs, it's going to use only those component configs and override these in the cluster. It's not going to generate new component configs or generate new kubeadm types. But it's sort of strangely looking, at least from UX perspective.
I think this is fine overall, as far as I understood. I think this is fine. I don't have any comments. Rafa, do you have any blockers on your side with the usage of --up config for upgrade?
I don't think so. I have to better look into the implications of this proposal, but as off the top of my head, I don't have any at the moment.
Yeah, I was basically pretty intentional to keep everything that's working currently with my config the same. So as long as you're applying kubeadm types, everything is going to stay the same. But if you omit the kubeadm types and just supply component configs there, it's not going to generate new kubeadm types or new component configs that are not in that file. Also, I changed a little bit, basically integrated the proposed couple of alpha commands with the kubeadm config command subtree. They're still under kubeadm alpha config, but we plan to be just straight away integrated into kubeadm config once this actually reaches beta.
Okay, I will have a better look in any case. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Rossi, so we have to merge this as implementable for 119.
Well, probably yes. We have like a couple of PRs in fight at the moment, and probably we shouldn't hold them off any further since they were basically stuck since the last cycle.
Yeah. Let me remove C architecture for this. Okay, so Tuesday is the deadline. I personally, I was fine with the old version of this PR minus the potential different flag for component configs during upgrade. If you have changed that, so you basically updated this kept PR with more stuff now, right?
No, I just tackled the feedback from from a couple of weeks ago. So
Okay,
basically, just the ---- config flag is changed, but I had to do some sort of like a weird dualistic state of this flag because of we actually are using it, and just added a few users because I think it was Fabrizio that suggested last time it might be a good idea to add a few user stories here, and also change the names of the alpha commands.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at this today, and I'm going to, I think it's pretty good, so I'm going to approve it and let the UGTM to somebody else. Make sure it's implementable. We can potentially merge it next week before Tuesday. I guess same applies to my PR, my cap. What other caps do you have, Rosti?
I don't think I have anything for the cycle.
I will try to review all the Capian flight by Friday, and it will be great if in the meeting minutes we have all the link for the pending caps.
Okay, I'm going to add all the links. I guess, actually, my link is already there. Rosti's link is already there. I don't think we have anything else for this cycle, so we only have these two caps. Rossi, if you find another cap, just ping me on Slack. I can have a look. But yeah.
Okay.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you, everybody. Let's leave the room to the Quest API and see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.